The silence in Yellowstone was a living thing. For Dr. Ben Carter, it was the canvas upon which he painted the portrait of a sleeping giant. From his isolated monitoring station, a small, lonely outpost on the edge of the caldera, he listened to the deep, slow breathing of the supervolcano. His job was to distinguish the normal sighs and murmurs from the whispers that could herald an apocalypse. For months, the giant had been sleeping soundly, but tonight there was something new, a hum. It wasn't the familiar low-frequency rumble of magma shifting miles below. This was different. It was clean, monotonous, and impossibly steady. It was a perfect 30 Hz signal, a frequency that had no business appearing on his seismographs. He spent an hour running diagnostics, convinced it was an equipment malfunction. He rebooted the system, checked the ground sensors, and even stepped outside into the freezing Wyoming night, listening to the profound silence of the wilderness. But when he returned, the hum was still there, a persistent, unnatural pulse on his screen. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and a prickling unease, Ben began to analyze the signal's structure. He isolated it from the background geological noise and ran it through a waveform analyzer. What he found made the hair on his arms stand up. The hum wasn't just a steady tone, it was modulated. There were tiny, almost imperceptible breaks in the signal occurring at precise, regular intervals. It was code, a slow, deliberate binary sequence. He worked frantically through the night, the vast, dark wilderness outside his window forgotten. The code was simple, a repeating pattern of pulses and pauses. It took him 4 hours to decipher the first complete sequence. It wasn't a message of greeting or a complex scientific formula. It was a number, a very large number. As a new sequence began to register on his screen, he realized with a dawning horror what he was looking at. The number was 1 digit lower than the last. It was a countdown. Deep beneath the unfathomable pressure and heat of the Yellowstone caldera, something non-human was slowly, patiently counting down to 0, and the sleeping giant was listening. The next morning, Ben sent an urgent report to the USGS headquarters. He detailed the anomalous signal, his decoding of the binary, and the terrifying conclusion of a countdown. He expected an immediate, frantic response, alarms, follow-up questions, maybe even a team of experts descending on his station. But instead, he got silence. An hour passed, then 2. Nothing. When he tried calling his direct supervisor, Dr. Ann Weber, he was stonewalled by an indifferent administrator who informed him Dr. Weber was in a meeting. By noon, the reply finally came in the form of a short, dismissive email. "Thank you for your report, Dr. Carter. This is likely the result of localized electromagnetic interference from your equipment. Please run a full system calibration." It was absurd. Ben had run calibrations 3 times. The signal was clean, steady, and undeniably real. He wasn't just being ignored, he was being actively silenced. The feeling of isolation deepened. He was alone with the biggest discovery in human history, and the world seemed determined not to listen. That night, as he sat watching another digit tick away on his monitor, a car drove up the access road to his station. Ben was startled. Unexpected visitors were almost unheard of. An older man with a weary but intelligent face stepped out. He was dressed in a simple field jacket, but carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone familiar with power. "Dr. Ben Carter?" the man asked, approaching the door. "My name is Arthur Finch. I used to be with the Department of Energy. I intercepted your report to the USGS. I think we need to talk about what's really sleeping under this park." Arthur Finch spread old, yellowed satellite photos and geological charts across the table. "We've known about it since the 70s, he began, his voice low and conspiratorial. "During a classified geothermal drilling project, we hit something that wasn't rock. It had a perfectly smooth surface and was made of a metallic alloy unknown to science." He told the story of Project Hades, a top-secret government initiative created to study the anomaly. They determined the object was colossal, stretching for miles beneath the caldera, and that it emitted a faint but constant energy field. They called it the Titan. "We concluded it was a ship, or some kind of self-contained station. It was in a state of deep hibernation, almost inert. For decades, we've just been watching, praying it would never wake up. The idea of something this massive powering up underneath the continent's largest volcano, the consequences were unthinkable." Finch explained that the official policy was total denial. Any evidence, any report like Ben's, was immediately suppressed to avoid panic and maintain the secret. "But what's the countdown?" Ben asked, his mind racing to comprehend the scale of the conspiracy. "That's what we don't know," Finch admitted. "In all our years of monitoring, the Titan has been completely silent. This signal is new. Something has changed. And if it is waking up, we have another problem: the containment protocol." Finch explained the government's worst-case scenario plan. If the Titan showed signs of hostility, or if its awakening threatened to destabilize the caldera, the plan was to use a series of subterranean nuclear devices to neutralize the object, essentially trying to bury it even deeper, a plan that would most certainly trigger the very eruption they were trying to prevent. "They'd rather break the world than let this secret get out," Finch said grimly. "We need to figure out what that countdown means before they make that insane decision." Finch revealed that Project Hades had made one failed attempt at direct contact. In the 1980s, they had drilled a narrow shaft and sent down a small probe to take a sample from the Titan's surface. The moment the probe touched the hull, it instantly went dead, and all contact was lost. The shaft was sealed, and the incident was buried. If we're going to understand what's happening, we need the data from that probe. It must have recorded something in the moment of contact, but getting to it won't be easy. The shaft is in a remote, restricted part of the park, and only a handful of people know its location. Using Arthur's old maps and Ben's knowledge of the terrain, they devised a plan. While Arthur created a diversion, a false geological alert on the other side of the caldera to draw the attention of the local park security, Ben would make his way to the forgotten shaft. The journey was perilous. Ben moved under the cover of darkness, trekking through snow-covered forests and past frozen geyser fields, feeling like a fugitive in his own backyard. Finally, he found it. A small, rusted metal cap, hidden beneath piles of rock and disguised as a natural outcrop. Using portable equipment, Ben managed to pry the heavy cap open and access the old communication cable leading down to the dead probe. He connected his laptop, praying the probe's onboard systems weren't completely fried. To his amazement, the system responded. The main power was gone, but the backup memory was intact. He initiated a data transfer. A single file, time-stamped with the date of contact over 40 years ago, appeared on his screen. It was an audio file. Ben put on his headphones and hit play. Instead of static or noise he expected, he heard a sound. It was a recording of the same 30 Hz hum, but then something else cut through it, a series of faint, melodic tones. It didn't sound like language. It sounded like a response. It was as if the probe had asked a question and the Titan had answered with a short, musical phrase before shutting it down. And then Ben understood. The countdown wasn't a threat. It was a request, a hailing frequency. The Titan wasn't waking up to destroy. It was waking up to talk to someone. Back at the station, Ben and Finch analyzed the audio file. The melodic phrase was short, just a few notes, but it was structured and repeating. It's not just a response, it's a key. Look! He overlaid the audio file with his analysis of the countdown hum, the melodic.
As the helicopters landed, soldiers in black tactical gear stormed the station. Ben and Finch were quickly apprehended. The unit's commander, a cold-eyed man who introduced himself as Colonel Vale, informed them they were being taken into custody for matters of national security. "You don't understand," Ben yelled as he was being led away. "It's not a threat, it's a beacon." But Vale wasn't listening. His orders were clear: secure the area and prepare to activate the protocol. The subterranean charges were already in place, ready to be detonated on his command. Ben and Finch were locked in one of the rooms of their own station while the soldiers set up their equipment. From the radio chatter, they learned they only had a few hours. Detonation was scheduled for dawn. Despair set in for Ben, but Finch, the old conspirator, remained calm. "They took our computers, but they forgot about the heart of this place," he whispered, nodding to the massive seismic transmitter in the corner. "They shut it down, but they didn't damage it." The plan was insane, but it was their only chance. They had to somehow restore power to the transmitter and send a message to the Titan. Not a complex code, but a simple, powerful vibration that might convince it to stop transmitting. While Finch distracted a guard by faking a heart attack, Ben scrambled for the main breaker panel. He used his knowledge of the system to bypass the shutdown, rerouting power from the emergency batteries directly to the transmitter. It was a risky move that could overload the entire system. They had only minutes. Ben got the transmitter powered up. Now they had to decide what to send. They couldn't replicate the complex key from the probe. They needed something simple, powerful, and immediate. "We can't talk to it, but maybe we can show it something. Show it that we're here, that we're listening." He wired the transmitter into the array of seismic sensors scattered across the park. Instead of sending an artificial signal, he decided to transmit to the Titan the sound of Yellowstone itself. He amplified the natural vibrations, the rumble of the geysers, the deep pulse of the magma chambers, even the faint tremors of buffalo herds moving on the surface. He broadcast the song of the earth directly into the heart of the sleeping giant. It was a raw, unfiltered data stream of the living, breathing planet it rested on. A message without words that said, "We are here. We are alive. Please don't let them destroy us." At first, nothing happened. The soldiers were already returning to the room. Colonel Vale was on the radio, giving orders for the final stage of the protocol. And then, suddenly, the 30 hertz hum stopped. Absolute silence. On the monitors that flickered back on with backup power, the perfect sine wave was gone. The countdown had vanished. The Titan had heard them. The silence in Colonel Vale's command post was deafening. His men stared at their instruments in confusion. The object they had monitored for decades had suddenly gone quiet. The countdown, the primary justification for the containment protocol, was gone. Vale was a soldier, not a scientist. He didn't understand what had happened, but he understood what it meant. The immediate threat, according to his orders, no longer existed. He couldn't give the detonation command. With a heavy sigh of frustration, he stood the protocol down. A new team arrived at the station. Not soldiers, but scientists in civilian clothes, led by an urgently reinstated Arthur Finch. His status as a rogue agent had instantly become expert consultant. Ben and Finch were no longer prisoners. They were the center of a new operation, one now focused on understanding, not containment. The Titan's silence was as puzzling as its hum had been. It had stopped its hailing call. But why? Had it simply been waiting? Had it realized its signal could bring harm to the natives? The answer came weeks later. A satellite monitoring Jupiter detected a massive energy burst near one of its moons, Europa. Something large had arrived, on schedule. The ship the Titan had been calling had reached its destination. The lighthouse had done its job, even if it had gone dark prematurely. Months passed. Ben Carter was no longer a lone seismologist. His station was transformed into a state-of-the-art multidisciplinary research center, funded through black-budget channels. He was now working with the best minds in the world, trying to establish a new kind of contact with the Titan. They learned that the Titan was not just a lighthouse, it was a guardian. Its placement under the volcano was no accident. Its massive energy field, they discovered, had been stabilizing the magma chambers for millennia, preventing an eruption. The civilization that left it here hadn't just been using Earth as a communication post, they had been protecting it. Humanity had been living under the protection of a silent guardian without ever knowing it. One day, while experimenting with transmitting complex mathematical sequences, the Titan responded. It wasn't a hum or a melody, it was an image. A complex three-dimensional model transmitted via seismic vibrations that our computers decoded. It was an image of DNA, but it wasn't human. The DNA image was the beginning of a new dialogue. The Titan began to share information, fragments of its history, scientific knowledge thousands of years ahead of humanity's. It told a story of a universe teeming with life, of cosmic travel, of the rise and fall of civilizations. Human history, it turned out, was just a brief moment in the cosmic record. Ben realized that the hum he had heard that first night was an echo of an ancient promise left for one civilization for another, and his own actions, transmitting the song of the earth, had become an echo in return, the planet's answer to its silent warden. Project Hades was renamed Project Echo. Its purpose was no longer containment, but cooperation. Humanity had entered a new era, secretly communicating with the ancient intelligence that slept beneath their feet. Sometimes when Ben stepped out into the quiet, cold Yellowstone night, he would look up at the stars. He knew that out there, near Jupiter, the visitors had arrived, and he knew that here, deep underground, a guardian slept. The world was so much larger and stranger than anyone had ever imagined, and it all started with a simple hum that shouldn't have been there, an echo from the depths of time that had changed the future of humanity.